Hi, I'm Brian LeBlanc, host of This Dementia Life, sponsored by Dementia Action Alliance. I have a very special guest and a very good friend of mine today. His name is Mike Belleville. Mike does a lot for DAA. Most importantly to me, he edits and puts this whole video podcast together, and he makes me look as good as possible, which is not always easy to do. Mike, welcome to the show today.
It's great to be on your show, Brian. I'm really honored and thrilled to be here.
Well, it's great to be on our show because you're much of a part of this as I am. You're the guy that puts it all together.
Well, it's definitely a lot of fun. I like watching all the different guests that you interview. The interaction you have with them is phenomenal. You can tell that you guys are having a great conversation. It's like you're just sitting there having a cup of coffee with them. And everybody always seems to be at ease when they're talking with you. So I'm looking forward to the same thing.
Yeah. Speaking of a cup of coffee, hey, there you go. So anyway, so let's start out. Let's talk about you. Who's Mike Belleville?
Sure. Well, I'm just turned 57 years old, and I just celebrated my 37th wedding anniversary with my beautiful wife. We have 3 great children, 5 grandchildren. I live in Massachusetts. I'm a retired telecommunications technician. I worked for Verizon for nearly 20 years, and basically had to retire because of a diagnosis of younger onset dementia. Initially was told it was early onset, but 2 years ago they changed it to Lewy body dementia. But like you, I don't like to define dementia as who I am. That's not who I am. Right,
and that's important because if you allow it to define who you are, then it sort of overtakes you, and in this world that we live in, that's not really something that we want to do. So now you've been married for 37 years. What type of effect, or how did this affect your family when they got? Well, let's back up a little bit. How long before your diagnosis were you showing signs, and what were those signs?
That's a great question. When we look back on it, we had seen things were happening at least 3 or 4 years before even the diagnosis. But the biggest thing that we saw in the beginning was at work. The type of work I did, I was an inside technician. It was very demanding, stressful, critical thinking. There was no room for mistakes. I mean, you could take down a pretty large customer, internet traffic or voice traffic. And what started happening was it was taking me longer and longer to do the things that would take me minutes to do. My multitasking skills were basically going down the drain. I would have 2 screens going with multiple windows running in each screen, and I could bounce from one to the other and know exactly what everything was doing. I was a great problem solver. I was actually a trainer, one of the trainers for some of the new hires coming in, and I found myself going to folks that I had trained on how to do the job and asking them on how to do my job. They were helping me more and more. So, I mean, that's where things, for me, I think we noticed more at work, because by the time I got home, I mean, I was there was nothing left in the tank. And I mean, of course, things were happening at home, but we just attributed it to work. We just thought of, oh, it's stress, so it's this, so it's that. But there were a few occasions where I pulled in the wrong driveway coming home from work one day, and another time I got confused as to where I was. I had to call my wife Cheryl, and she had to kind of guide me, give me directions on how to get home. This was pre, GPS and the type of apps that you have on phones nowadays.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. So, but the aha moment for us was, like I said, we've been married 37 years now. Back then, I don't remember how long ago or how many years it was, but as married couples do, we were having a disagreement one night. But what made this one so different was that I really lost it. I mean, I said things to my wife that I would never say to her. And I woke up the following morning getting a cold shoulder, and probably justifiably so. And I didn't understand why, which made her even more irate. But when I explained to her that I did not understand why she was upset with me, and I knew nothing about what happened the night before, that's when we got real concerned. I mean, luckily for me, she believed me. I tell guys, don't try to pull that excuse on your wife.
Right.
It's going to get you one of two phone calls. She's either going to call a doctor or she's going to call a lawyer.
Right.
Luckily for me, she called the doctor. But that started us on the path of diagnosis, which took quite a long time, numerous tests, and you've been through them all.
Don't you just love those tests? How many clocks you can draw, and draw this square with a square inside, and it comes out looking like a circle. And
yeah, I mean, and it's the whole thing of it's. I mean, they have to do their job, doctors, and it's a process of elimination. Well, maybe it's this. Well, maybe it's that. Maybe it's this, and all those. Let's find out if it's this. Things take time, so it just drags on the process, and your anxiety goes up even more because something's wrong. You just don't know what the hell it is until you finally get, the tests. All the tests start coming back. The spinal tap, the neurocognitive testing, the MRIs, and then he kind of puts it all together and says, well, we can't say for certainty, but this is what everything is pointing at. And this is what we think the problem is.
So when you started out, you said that you started out with a diagnosis of FTD, and then it changed.
It was actually, he gave me a diagnosis of younger onset Alzheimer's.
Okay.
But the thing that was great is we had a great relationship with our neurologist, and he said, you know what, I really want you to get a second opinion. So he sent us up to Mass General Hospital, and we went to the memory disorders unit there, and we were able to get connected with a fantastic, world-renowned neurologist who looked over all of the testing that he had done, my other neurologist, and then did his own testing on top of it. And he basically confirmed his diagnosis. He said, yeah, this looks like it's younger onset Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I did the same thing when I got my diagnosis, diagnosed by my neurologist. And then for a second opinion, I went to a neuropsychiatrist, and same diagnosis as the neurologist.
Right.
So the second opinions are very important because of the fact that you just want to make sure that what they're telling you is something that is really going on, and that's why we decided to get the second opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you're talking about obviously a life-changing moment, but besides the fact of, getting whacked with this diagnosis, you're now thrown into a whole new world of planning, your financial planning, things you got to do about this. And, and I tell people now, I thought getting the diagnosis would be the worst thing that ever happened to me. It's not. It's the stuff you have to deal with afterwards. All the going through the Social Security disability, all the bureaucracy, all the health insurance issues. It's just, it's great. People don't realize the scope of what people are going through with this diagnosis.
Exactly.
Behind the scenes, it's just huge.
And that's why, people like you and I go out and talk to folks to let them know what it is like to go through the diagnosis process. And because people, I don't think they have a full understanding of everything that needs to be done. You're basically ending one type of professional life, and then you're moving into a life that you basically don't know really too much about. And there's a lot of prep work. There's a lot of prep work for that. So, you talked about your wife, and now how many children do y'all have?
We have 2 daughters in their mid to younger 30s, and we have a son who's going to be turning 21 next month.
Now, how did this? What type of effect did it have on them?
It was huge. I mean, at first it was hard to accept, and it's been a huge change because of the issues that I have with dementia. And again, when people hear the word dementia, they just think, oh, memory problems. They don't see all the other things that happen with it. And for me, and obviously a lot of other people, too much activity or too much commotion is just overstimulating for me. I mean, my brain just goes into overdrive, or too much noise is just like a pinball going off in my head. And another thing that's really hard for me is people having, listening to multiple conversations going on at the same time. So if my family's coming over to visit and they're bringing the grandkids, well, my daughters are trying to have a conversation with my wife, my son-in-laws and my son are having a conversation, and my grandkids are just being the grandkids. And I love them to death, but they range in age from 8 years old to 2 years old. So they're being kids, and you want to let them be kids. You want to let them still enjoy and have fun. But there's things they want to do with me that I can't do anymore. And that's hard.
Yeah.
But having to now try to plan, they have to work out plans ahead of time. Now, okay, who's going over Dad's house? We don't want everybody to be there at the same time. Things like that. And that's not what you think of when you're growing up and bringing your kids to see their grandparents. So it's been hard for them, but they've all adjusted really, really well.
Let's back up a little bit to what you were talking about, because I had you briefly talked about the issue that you had when you got angry, with your wife. Mm-hmm. And do you, I still go through anger, mm-hmm. And most of the time it's either when I'm trying to do something that I used to be able to do without any issue, and now I can't do it. Mm-hmm. Or it's something that I'm trying to remember, mm-hmm. that used to be at the forefront of my head, and now it's lost. It's just not there anymore. I'm trying to get a handle on that. How do you keep a handle on that?
That's a good question. I typically, be honest with you, I don't. I call it Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah.
That movie, because that's all it could be even shorter than that. And it's exactly what you said. It's the frustration of not being able to do something, or if I'm working on something that I can't do and the frustration, anxiety builds up, or it could be something as simple as a conversation I'm having with my wife. And she's talking to me, but the words she's saying aren't the words I'm processing in my brain. So things get garbled and don't make any sense. So I'm constantly, asking her, what are you talking about? And she'll come back to me and say, well, I'm talking about this. And before you know it, it's just gone in 60 seconds.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I don't have a break to stop that from happening. There's times where I can catch myself and I'll bite my tongue and try to stop. And unfortunately for my wife, they always say it happens to the one you're closest to, the one you love the most. But she's learned to recognize when I start to go. And she's really good at redirecting me and trying to slow me down, so to speak, or change the conversation, or talk about, hey, what's for dinner tonight? Or, just get me off of whatever it is I'm gonna, cool over. Because I can't control it. It's not something I'm doing on purpose. I mean, I can't control it.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand, I think, is that, and it's not that we don't want to control it. It's not that we, want to be this person who goes off on a rant because they can't understand, or they're trying to understand, but they just can't, and the emotions get in the way, because we want to be sort of who we once were, and we miss that part of ourselves. You talk about multitasking and at work and so forth. And, you and I, we both used to be very, very good at what we did. Mm-hmm. And we're not that anymore. But we do other things now that we are good at. And part of that is our advocacy. Now you do a lot of stuff with DAA. Tell us a little bit about you and Jeff Borgoff. Y'all do the tech spot where y'all talk about technical stuff. Let's talk about that a little bit in case anybody is watching and they have some technical issues that they would like to learn about. Tell us a little bit about what y'all do on that show.
Sure. I think it's called Tech Corner. We do it the first Thursday of every month, and I do it with my good buddy Jeff Borgoff, who's another gentleman who has younger onset Alzheimer's. He lives in New Jersey. Jeff comes from an IT background, very, very smart guy. And we basically get on a Zoom chat, and anybody can call in and, basically throw a problem at us. Between the two of us, we've been pretty successful so far, being able to help them resolve their problems. It could be a cell phone, an Apple device or Android device. It could be a tablet. It could be a computer. We have the ability to actually remote into someone's computer to help fix issues that way as well. We realize that we can't help everybody in the hour or hour and a half, just one day a month. So if time permits, Jeff and I have agreed that, we schedule private times with other folks who may not be able to join us on that Thursday, but still, are looking for help or assistance. And it's been great. I mean, because we both believe technology is an area that people who are living with dementia and or their caregivers can really truly benefit from. Um, and it's open to folks who are living with dementia and their caregivers. We're not trying to open it to the general public, but I mean, we've both found that although we can't multitask anymore, we can still try to problem solve, if we're focused on doing one thing at a time. It may take me longer to do, or Jeff a little longer to do than he used to be able to do. But we usually still are able to get through it. And I've always been involved with, Windows PCs and stuff for years, but I switched over to Apple a number of years ago. And Jeff is extremely fluent in Windows PCs and IT stuff. So between the two of us, we can cover a lot of ground.
So they get the best of both worlds with the Windows application and with the Mac.
Yeah, we're trying to, and it doesn't even have to just be a computer problem. It could be something that you're using in your home, an alarm clock or whatever it is. We might not have the fix for it right there and then, but we can research it and try to figure out what the problem is and try to help you fix the problem.
I always tell people now that I rely on my two girlfriends. One is named Siri and the other is Alexa. And they help me out so much. All I have to do is ask them a question, and they're so polite, they're so nice, and they say please and thank you, and they play music for me and solve problems for me, and they're nice to have around, So I would, I joke about that, but we both have embraced technology. I mean, using what we're doing right now to bring this to everyone. It took me about a week or so to figure out how to make a plain wall behind me turn into my own private newsroom. But it's little victories that you get, and those kind of push you forward. Now, what about your speaking? I know you go around a lot to speak to groups and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that too.
I've been advocating a lot with my local Alzheimer's Association chapter. I'm extremely fortunate to live in a state that has a phenomenal chapter, and they keep me pretty active and engaged. Doing a lot of local speaking engagements. I think I've got 3 of them scheduled this month, all in Massachusetts. I've actually testified at my state house on 2 or 3 occasions, trying to get bills passed, locally for the state of Massachusetts. And I've actually, through them, I've spoken at the Alzheimer's Forum, last year in front of a pretty large group of people, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to do a little bit more than that. I'm actually going to be going to Iowa in a couple of weeks for DAA to do an engagement there, and it's all about, like what you said. It's getting, hopefully, people to change their perception of what they think dementia is, and get them to come around to a different way of thinking about it. It's never about, I tell my story because that's the only story I really know, but I'm not telling, what I'm trying to get across to people is it's not about me. This is happening to millions of people out there. And I tell folks I'm one of the lucky ones. And I really mean that. After getting my diagnosis, I hid under a rock for 5 or 6 months. And if it wasn't for my wife calling my local Alzheimer's Association, which led to a consultation, which led to support groups, which led to educational programs, which led to my advocacy work, which really opened the doors to me to looking at other organizations. And thank God one of them was DAA, and getting involved with DAA. That, and I live in an area that has really great hospitals. I'm only a little more than an hour away from Boston. But what scares the hell out of me is people who don't have those resources available to them.
Right.
And people who are out there trying to do this all by themselves and not get plugged into a network of other people, a support group or whatever it is. And those are the people that I'm really passionate about trying to help and reach. So if we can tell our story, and it's just our story, but if we can tell our story and hopefully, get one person to change their perception and get them to go out and help one of those people, you can't put a price on that.
And that is so true. Last week, I think it was last week, I was with Karen Love, our executive director, and Jackie Pinkowitz, who is our board chair, and Robert Bowles, Lori Shearer, and Truthful Loving Kindness. And we were out in Los Angeles, where we attended the neurological summit. And there was a health fair that we attended, and we had a booth and so forth. We had so many people come up to us and ask questions about, what do I do? This is what's happening to me. What's happening to me? Can you tell me? And these were people that had not yet seen a doctor, but yet there was some that did see a doctor, and they were told, oh, you don't have Alzheimer's because you're too young.
Oh.
This individual was 48 years old.
Wow.
And there, you talked about the knowledge that's out there. And I was happy that I could be there at that point in time to talk to these folks. Do you run into those situations where people come up to you after you speak and say, my mother, father, husband, wife, and so forth is doing this? Number one, what do you tell them? But number two, how does that make you feel about what you do?
Yeah, that does happen. And it gives me a huge, when I used to do my job at work, I would get great satisfaction out of doing a great job, knowing that what I was doing was contributing to something. When someone comes up to me afterwards and they've heard me talk, and we sit down and for 5 or 10 minutes, however long it is, and they tell me that, one little thing I said to them may have made a difference on how they look at their loved one who's going through this disease. To me, the satisfaction that I get from that it makes everything worthwhile what we're doing. It's incredible to hear folks, and ask questions. And for me, the first thing I tell them is, number one, I'm obviously not a doctor. I'm certainly not here to give you medical advice. But if you're not satisfied or happy with the information you're getting from your doctor, go get a new doctor. Too many people are relying on, oh, I've had this primary care physician for the last 30 years and I have all the trust in the world in him or her. And they're getting bad information.
Or no information.
Or no information, exactly. So the I mean, you hear from everybody always, information is knowledge. The best thing in the world you can do is just don't take no for an answer. If you know, everybody knows your body, you know your mind. If you think something is wrong, trust your instincts and get out there and find a doctor who's willing to listen to you.
That's great advice.
But get to a doctor. Don't
Right.
Don't go on WebMD. Don't self-diagnose yourself. And then the other thing I try to do is, if it's someone who's living with the disease, if they haven't already, I try to plug them into a network of folks. Hopefully, if a good Alzheimer's Association chapter, or obviously DAA, or dementia mentors, or whoever it is, get them. To me, what I like to tell folks is doctors are great and they're trained to fix a problem. You have an infection, they whip out the prescription pad and they give you a prescription. But for people who have this disease, the first prescription and number one prescription they should be giving folks is social engagement. And that's plugging them into somebody or somewhere to keep their mind involved and keep their mind going. And that social engagement can be anything. It could be volunteering at your senior center. It could be joining a gardening club. It could be getting involved in advocacy work. It could be going out on the road as much as you do and telling your story and changing the perception of what people think of dementia. It could be anything, but just get involved, do something, get engaged.
Yeah.
Worst thing in the world is to, just sit in a room full of stare at four walls. And
in there.
Yeah. So like I said, the first 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
That was me.
I think after diagnosis, we all go through the reality of what we've been told. It's kind of scary about what our life is going to look like from that point forward. There's so many unknowns because, as you know, even though we share the same disease, we all experience different things individually. So it's not a laid out plan where you can follow A, B, and C, because you go from A to T back to F and all over the place. So it's it don't make sense. But anyway, Mike, we're about done, and but I'd like to ask you what I ask everybody. Last question is the future of dementia world is very unclear. No cure, no prevention, no way to stop progression. Give me something that you look forward to, or what do you see in the future, maybe 10, 20 years from now? What are your hopes?
That's a great question. I love when you ask people that question.
Except when I ask you, right?
Right. But no, I think for me, there's so much focus on obviously finding a cure, which is obviously what everybody wants. But I think for me, until that day comes, they need to be giving as much effort into making things better and easier for the people who are living with the disease now. I mean, you and I both, probably know, unless a real miracle happens tomorrow, there's not going to be much there for us. But we hope and pray that, the future generations, our kids and grandkids, aren't going to have to go through this.
Exactly.
So you always keep that hope alive out there. But I would love to see, and there's starting to be a change now. There's starting to be a little bit of a focus of a change. And what can we do to make the lives of people who are living with dementia better right now? I want to put a plug out there for a lovely lady who lives here in Massachusetts. Her name is Jennifer Apozidis. She owns a restaurant called the Red Raven. It's in Acton, Mass. And she started a program called Purple Tables Reservations. And what Purple Tables is, and she lost her mom to younger onset Alzheimer's. Here's what Purple Tables does. It's, you can call her restaurant and just tell them you want a Purple Table reservation. No questions asked. They immediately know that someone in your party has whatever the issue is. They seat you in the quietest area of the restaurant. You're given extra time, extra attention by the wait staff. You're given more special accommodations. And it just makes going out a more pleasurable experience.
Wow.
Now, what she's done with this is she's taken this idea, and it's starting to spread like crazy. And they do training. All the wait staff gets training on dementia. And it's not just for people living with dementia. It could be a parent who has a child with autism. It could be a veteran who has PTSD. I mean, it affects a lot of people. So there's multiple restaurants now in the state of Massachusetts who are jumping on board with this. They even have an app that you can download on your iPhone. So all you have to do is go to the app, find a restaurant, it'll search by city, tap on it, make the reservation, and boom, you're in. I'm sorry, that was my laptop. I got to.
Oh, okay.
Technology.
I thought it was me. I said, I don't have anything that sounds like that.
I forgot to shut it off. I apologize. But it's also it's already in multiple states as well. Now imagine if you took that same idea and other people started doing it. I was having a conversation yesterday with a really nice lady from Leading Age. She was writing a story for Leading Age magazine. And what if you could do the same thing with Uber or Lyft or a taxi?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but the people are trained, so they understand that the person they're picking up may have some type of issue. And they get a little extra care, a little special. I mean, obviously you're going to be seated in the back of the car, so you don't have to worry about the quiet thing, but you might be giving a little more special help, getting in and out of the vehicle or giving directions on where you want to go. And without the driver knowing what your issue is. Imagine going to a grocery store, and I mean, I know that the dementia friendly movement is already doing things like this, but you have a line that people who are, in our case, living with dementia can go in, and those people know that just that line, like, in other words, let's say, every supermarket has an express line of 15 or
right.
Well, what if I have 25 items in my basket? And for me to stand in the regular long lines, I get really anxious, agitated, nervous. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, what if folks were able to show a card and were given permission to go through the express line?
Right.
And that person in the express line knows that, that person may have an issue. And if you want to come right out and say it's dementia, it's dementia. Little things like that. So what I look forward to in the future is a society or a town where, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it also takes a village to help somebody living with dementia, because it's not just the person who's living with the dementia, it's the caregiver, it's the whole family. who's going through this experience.
Yeah.
And if you have everybody in the village helping, it's certainly going to make the experience a little more tolerable and a little less stressful. And in the long run, hopefully the person who's living with the disease can stay in their home for as long as possible.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, in order to be able to stay in a familiar surrounding for as long as you can.
For me,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was saying, for me, it's paramount. It's on my list. You know,
yeah.
I certainly wouldn't want to put my wife in a situation where she has to make the ultimate decision whether she can do it or not. I mean,
sure.
If she has to put me into an assisted living community, then that's what she has to do.
Yeah.
You know, especially if it's because of safety or anything else. But this is, I mean, you know yourself, you get into your own little comfort zone when you're in the most familiar surroundings. And this is where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
We're doing this interview. I'm sitting in my recliner.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm comfortable. You know, this is where I can still be me.
There you go. And that's the important part. So, well, I think we have covered a lot of information. You may have to edit for time, but you have to promise me something now. Don't do anything, you know, I know you're going to be editing and all that kind of stuff. You know, don't make yourself look better than what you do. You know, don't put like extra hair on or anything like that. So, you know, I want people to see, you know, but, you know, but what I think what I want to say to the people that are watching this, you just, you know, viewed a conversation between two people that both have early onset Alzheimer's. And we had a conversation. Yes, I had some questions that I wanted to ask, but that's the only scripts that we have. Everything else came from our brains. Everything else came from our heads. And we had an intelligent conversation. I guess the message is, just because you have people that are living with a dementia-related illness, don't count us out. We can still be productive members of society. We have phenomenal ideas, as you heard Mike talk about, and we can still make a difference. As long as we're allowed to do that, we can still make a difference. So, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today. I appreciate everything that you've done. I appreciate everything that you continue to do, because you are making a difference. And for those of you that are watching, please share this information with any of your friends who may be able to benefit from any of the things that we said on this episode. But we also have all the other episodes listed on our website, which is daanow.org. Just click on podcast and you'll see this. You'll see the technical shows and so forth. It's on Facebook. It's all over social media. So please share with someone that you may feel is going to benefit from any of the information that we discuss. So I appreciate you joining us, and I hope that you continue to join us for future episodes. Again, my name is Brian LeBlanc. Mike Belleville, thank you so much for joining me today, and we hope to see you next time on This Dementia Life.